Welcome to the Replace Loss with Love podcast. I'm your host, Trevilia Hodge, affectionately known as the Ballhead Daddy. Join me as we celebrate the power of love and resilience, even in life's most challenging moments. Remember, love-changing experiences happen because your love life begins and ends with you. Welcome to Replace Loss with Love podcast. I'm your host, Trevilia Hodge, and I'm excited today because I have the phenomenal Selena Hill with me, and we're going to do something different from my introductory podcast. This is the first one, and it's a very special podcast for me. And I just wanted to say first, thank you, Selena, for being here with me. And she's going to interview me today, guys. And I am so glad that you're here with me. Stay tuned, buckle up, and just want to say thank you.
Oh, Trevilia, thank you for having me. Appreciate the warm welcome. For those who don't know, I'm an award-winning multimedia journalist, consultant, media personality, on-air talent, and host. And I am so honored to be working with Trevilia and to have her share her story on the Replace Loss with Love podcast. Now, for those who don't know who Trevilia Hodge is, she is an award-winning filmmaker, author, poet, playwright, and storyteller who has been dedicated to uplifting her community as well as all others who are dealing with, struggling with self-acceptance or love or loss or all the things. Trevilia is just one bundle of abundance of life and love. And again, Trevilia, thank you so much for having me as the official interviewer on your first podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
So this is a special podcast. It's, when you and I first connected, it was at American Sesh, which was, created by Pinky Cole. And from there, I had an opportunity to learn more about you and just your story of resilience and perseverance. And I'm so excited for everyone else to hear that. In this first episode, I want to talk about a deeply personal story that you told me. You told me it was Mother's Day, I believe in 2021, and you did something very, very special. You released a balloon. What was the meaning and significance behind that release, and why did you do that on Mother's Day?
That's a good question. It's hard to say mother still, and I'm learning to do that. But that particular Mother's Day, I went out to this lake, and I love to walk around with two friends of mine, and we released a balloon in honor of my son, Zion. Unfortunately, I lost due to a miscarriage because of domestic violence. And for 20 years almost, yeah, that to that time, I held the secret. I told my friends at the time I felt like I was standing over a phantom grave for all those years. Like it was like part of me wanted him, and then part of me wanted to keep him secluded to myself because I didn't want to share um, that part of me. But then I realized the biggest part was the shame that I had of feeling that I did not protect him. And I didn't know how to voice that. I didn't know how to articulate or ask someone for help of how I was dealing with my emotions because I had an opportunity to mother children in my life that were not my birth children. And you do have mom guilt. You have parent guilt if you're a father, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be just what I identify myself as a woman. But the guilt that I felt of losing a child was really horrific for me. And during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time alone. I had to do a lot of self-reflection, and I did not want to deal with me. I did a lot of things to escape dealing with a lot of the trauma that I had gone through in my life, especially that part of my life. I sometimes wouldn't even think about it. And then it just all came up during the pandemic, and I had to find a way to
Mhm.
let things out. So with therapy and a lot of prayer and a
Mhm.
lot of coping mechanisms, a lot of reading and reading other people's story, I said this year I'm going to utilize my voice. I reflect back when we had the conversation about me hearing George Floyd
Mhm.
calling out to his mom, and I don't know if that was like the mom in me wanted to not only help him, even though he was not, I'm not old enough to be his mother, but it was something about that. And I worked through that for that year. And I just said, I need to make peace with this because I made peace with so many other things in my life. It was time.
So, from my understanding, what you're saying is you went almost 2 decades before ever publicly revealing that you had a miscarriage. So you're saying it happened around 2000, 2001,
In 2000.
and 2000. And because of the pandemic, we all had a lot of time to think and reflect, and a lot of inner demons started coming up, things we haven't dealt with, things we suppressed because we had that time. So that's what happened for you. You were triggered by the George Floyd murder, um, 2020. What happened from that point to May 2021, where you said, okay, not only am I willing to recognize a tragic loss that happened in my life, but I'm willing to process these feelings and release it?
And then the processing of the feelings did not happen initially. I was terrified. I was terrified of what people would think of me. Um, One, because I hid it for so long. I was afraid mm, that they would be disappointed in me because I was always the helper. I was always the person to, you know, advocate for everybody. Come on, you can do this. Whatever we got to work through, let's work through it. Um, but I didn't know how to be that voice for myself. Growing up in the church, we always serve, and I have a servant heart. And so for me, it was like, my life is just going to be this. And I'm here to help everybody else, which I didn't like harbor any feelings behind it because I'm a cheerful giver. I love people and I love to love on people, but with other traumas I dealt with, it was very hard to love on myself. And I
Mm.
knew if I was going to be whole, if I was going to get through the pandemic and survive it, because I have alopecia, so I have three different types. Shout out to Dr. Anderson if you're listening, for talking me through what I was dealing with, but with my immune system being compromised, being diagnosed with a rare blood clotting disorder. I said, we all have to one day leave this earth. I want to leave with reconciliation of self. And so I started off first telling a few friends, crying it out and saying, okay, um, I think I'm going to survive the pandemic. I don't think this illness is going to take me. I did in the beginning of that journey, being ill during the pandemic. And when my doctor said, you're going to survive it and we're going to make sure that you do, I didn't want to leave out of it the same, harboring so much. Because I was like, what if this condition is because I'm keeping so much in?
Mm.
Um, and I really had to think about if this man would, at the time, with the son that would be a man at this moment in his life, right, would describe his mother, how would he describe me? And when I thought about that, I was very uneasy because I didn't think he would be proud of me, right? And some of my family still they don't know the story, but the closest ones to me, um, I had to tell them the story. I had to tell them not in detail, but what I had been harboring for so many years. And it felt great. Um, and I just was like, I'm thankful I could see that when I look in the mirror, because I became even more proud of myself, that my son, if he were here, would be proud of me. And that's what started the process. A lot of therapy, a lot of trauma therapy.
Mhm.
Uh, in that year, I'm talking about therapy once a week, sometimes twice a week,
Yes.
with my doctor, who is phenomenal, uh, with me, literally meeting with me once a week, sometimes if needed, and choosing to have aids as far as like medication to get through it, because I was willing to face it all. If I could face this and I could vocalize it and accept it, then everything else, people may say, you went through worse.
Mm,
Uh, for me, no, because the love that I have for children, the love that I had for the children that I was given the opportunity to help raise, no matter what has happened to me outside of that particular trauma, uh, the losing of this son was it was haunting. It
mm.
was for many years.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Trevilia. That I know that is not easy to talk about and even to deal with. Um, may I ask, how did you lose your son in 2000?
So I was getting ready for a baby shower, and I'm smiling because I don't want to keep crying. Um, so I was getting ready for a baby shower, and my fiance at the time, we were going to his sister's baby shower, and he left out, and I was getting dressed, and I got some food ready, and we were leaving out to go, and he came back in, and he was out of sorts, and I was like, well, what's going on? We have to go. We're going to be late. And he just became violent. He started to wreck the house. He started to throw things around. He threw me into the table. He threw the television. He stopped some of the tennis out on the carpet. I don't know why that still resonates in my mind, because I was like, what is happening? And I did not ever have a domestic violence situation with him, ever.
Are you
So
saying that there were no red flags that he
no,
was abusive or mentally unstable before this point?
we had arguments, heated ones. I knew of his past and things that he had dealt with. But as far as how no, because I didn't want to date him, right? And then we ended up getting engaged. And I just was like, I'm going to live this with your life. And these are the type of men that I want. And this man came into my life and he broke walls in me that were, I didn't think they were able to be penetrated. I'm being very honest. Um, He did. He was not the type of guy that I would date at all. And one of my friends like, well, he's not what you're used to, but he really likes you. You should give him a chance. But he was very warm to me and he was very kind to me. His family was, they still are. His family still is amazing to me. Um, and he gave me a sense of warmth and love that I did not have. It wasn't what he could give get from me, but what he could get to me and how sweet he was to me. I said at a conference that I spoke at one time that we had no goals. Our goals was just to love each other. um, but because I was so responsible for so long and working at an early age and having a job and taking care of my brothers and and this man just came in my life and all he wanted to do was just be in my space. And so it was almost like a good break you know? I didn't feel like I had to be on so much. And then he didn't care. He was like, I just love you for who you are. He was a very attractive man. And people were like, well, how would you date her? And I'm very confident still to this day. So I'm like, well, why wouldn't he? You know what I have to offer? You know, and so it just was something refreshing. It was different. It was exciting a lot of the time. It was. But there were some things as far as him as his character and um, not having his life together it was kind of questionable. I'm not gonna, lie, but I never thought he would hurt. I did not. I didn't. I was just shocked. Even when he came in the house the way he was, I did not think that he would ever put his hands on me.
So, and that was the that day was the first day that he became physically abusive.
Yes, the first and only day.
First and only day.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I know
Yep.
you said threw the potato salad down, started breaking stuff up in the house. What else happened that day?
So I ran into the room when he threw me through that table, and I got up, I ran into my bedroom trying to get him to close the door so I could call someone to help, right? Because it happened so fast, my front door was still open because we were supposed to be leaving to go out, right? So this wasn't like, I don't even know how to explain it because also it was 2 decades ago. And so I ran into my bedroom, trying to close the door. And the reason why I think about the potato salad is because he had on Timberland boots. So he was like stomping the potato salad into the rug. And I'm like, what is going on? And then also I have to protect myself. And ran into the room. He caught up to me. I fell to the ground and he started to kick me with the boot. And I caught like right here on my face. If I don't have makeup on, you can kind of lightly see the scar. Obviously, so many years later, you can't really see it. And he nipped me with the boot here. But I went and I lifted my arm, and then I just remember he kicked me in my stomach. And by that time, I blocked out so much, to be very honest with you. I don't even know from that moment to when the cops came, because again, the door was open. One of my neighbors did call the police. Um, that they came in and they escorted him out and they took him in a cop car and took him to, I don't even know where he went, to be honest. I don't know. He called me and I was like, why is this man calling me? And this was like hours later. And he told me that he had never used this drug before. I know he smoked marijuana. I didn't know that. I didn't, but I know he did. And he went out of the house to do it. But he said he laced it with um, formaldehyde. I think about it because they call it Volt was the name they called it back then. And he was like, I want to go to rehab because I can't believe that I did this to you. I love you so much. So for months after that, we did not speak or communicate. And then when we did begin to communicate and talk, he was ready to go to rehab. And unfortunately, in the same year, from in that May, it was that May till October, he passed away the day he was going to leave for rehab.
So so you said he was a frequent marijuana user.
Mhm.
He was on another type of drug that day, and he's saying that he was in a drug induced state of rage.
Exactly.
And that's what, because I was like, it just, things aren't that makes so much sense, because I was like, it wasn't adding up. Okay, before we get to his tragic passing, and was that because of drugs? Like, how did he just pass?
So that is the question that I had chose to not ask his family
Okay.
because I was there when he passed, and that added another layer of trauma on me because I was there literally until he took his last breath. And they did do an autopsy. They did find drugs in his system, but the doctor at the hospital said she felt like someone must have dosed him with his drink because of the way it digested and the small traces that were in it. She said none of it made sense to her. So she kept asking me, was he trying to commit suicide? Because this isn't adding up. It wasn't like she saw the marijuana, right? But then she was like, there were uppers, downers, there was all these things that she used. And I'm looking at her like, first, I just want to go see him. Because you're like, as soon as I walked in, she was like, are you the wife? I said, I'm his fiance. And she was like, I need to talk to you because I had, a child with me that day. And because we were going to go up to the Poconos where his sister lived, his eldest sister lived. We were having a party. He was going to go to rehab. She was like, well, first, she can't go in there with you. So we have to get somebody to come get her. And I need to brace you for what you're going to see. And so she started saying, I said, wait, yeah, that's not who he is. And she said, well, unfortunately, it looks like somebody might have given him a roofie or something. She was like, because if he wasn't trying to hurt himself, to unalive himself, she was like, and that's what I think happened. She said, because he digested it, he drank it. But he had went out the night before with his friends and they went to celebrate and, to wish him well. So you don't know what happened, but he had an ulcer that was bleeding. So it ruptured the ulcer. And when he got up, Oh God. Um, he slipped on the blood and he started bleeding, throwing up blood, and he slipped on it into the family. If I'm saying this wrong, because it's been many years since I had to repeat this, uh, that's what caused him, initially because he fell, right? And then they called the ambulance. He coded in the ambulance, and he got to the hospital. And by that time he got to the hospital, he was brain dead. And a lot of it, I don't really talk about it a lot, but then also because after we left the hospital, I went to clean up the blood, so I saw it on the walls. It was just it was a very traumatic year. Um,
All this was happening after you lost your unborn child.
the same year. It was months later. Yeah,
How were you coping with that initial trauma?
I began to neglect myself more, but I hid it because again, I had people who relied on me. But I lived alone, so I went home, showered in the dark. Nobody saw that, you know. When I began to like not eat, even though I'm plus size, doctors for years, several can tell you how they would beg me, if you just ate, you would lose the weight. Why would you not eat? And but sometimes I can articulate why some childhood trauma as well, but a lot of it had to do with that, you know. Then I began to write affirmations on my mirror to kind of bring me out of it because I showered in the dark for a long time. Um, I began to, I never used drugs like during that time. And I thank God that I did not lean on that, right? I thank God for a very strong spiritual family in my life that taught me to try to build a relationship with God. But what I can say is, and I've never said this out loud, for a very long time, I used to sniff rum alcohol for a very long time. I just didn't want to be here, right? I didn't want to be here after the day that I lost my son. I did not want to be here. I was okay if I was not here anymore. It's very hard for me to say that out loud because of where I am in my life. But the woman that I am to embrace the woman where I was at that time um, has done a marvelous job of soothing her
Ye-
and, you know, um, accepting that's where I was because that's what gets me to be here to help people today, to be totally honest and transparent. So it got real dark. It got real dark real fast, especially because I thought reconciliation was there for he and I. And I was willing to do the work. I was willing to do the work with him because I did love him. And I believed him. I believed that, it was drug abuse. I really did. And I still do. I still do to this day. And it was tough. And I remember my best friend at the time, he came to me and said, I know you. You love hard. And while everybody thinks you're strong and you can make it through this and you'll be fine, he was like, I know this will take you out. And he stayed with me. Like he was like, if I just come here to take out your trash, I'm gonna make sure that you're okay. And he kept his word. He stayed by my side a lot. Um, so that helped. That helped a lot, you know. And again, I'm a reader and I pray unmercifully sometimes. I've learned over the years not to beg God, but then I was begging God, either take me or help me out of this. What do I do? Um, because I had childhood trauma on top of that. And it was like, so I became very numb. And even though I had stopped sniffing the rubbing alcohol and I uh, stopped drinking because of how my son's father died, that year I stopped drinking. And I had stopped drinking for 14 years because of it. And I thank God I stopped drinking because I probably would have continued to still drink, heavily.
Um, I know you said in order to get out this state of darkness, it took your faith, it took your prayers, it took friends, it took love. it took support. Um, was there anything else that you did during this time or shortly thereafter that just helped you continue to persevere?
Writing. Writing helps a lot in journals. But honestly, throwing myself into other people, I always will find a cause to support. Trust me. I am a philanthropist at heart, okay? Um, I throwing myself into other people because I wasn't ready to deal with myself. I didn't feel worthy at the time, but I don't recommend that for anybody. You are worthy to handle what you need to handle and to fill the scars that with the correct community behind you, right? Um, but because I wasn't ready. So I was telling my until you're ready. I wasn't ready. But I felt safety in numbers. So I could support people lovingly, willingly. I still genuinely, all the love that I've given, I'm grateful that I was able to give it out, right? Um, Even if it wasn't the healthiest part of me, it was from a genuine space. And writing in my journals was wonderful because I felt like my imagination was taken away from me at a young age, dealing with childhood trauma. And then this made me number. So that poet that was in me, that one day poet laureate of the United States that I'm claiming I will be, um, that playwright that was in me, um, was very much so pushed down. But through my journals, I was able to do it. And then I did start to do poetry, and I started to do slams, and I started to do um, advocacy for people. And I did in the high school too. I worked for Planned Parenthood. And I advocated for young girls to, be okay with their bodies. So I always try to take a tragedy and turn it into triumph, right? And I just wasn't able to be in a space to rally for people who lost a child. Um, Even though for years I said I didn't want children, because I had the responsibility of taking care of other people's children, my brothers, and then people who I did, and I love them. I love that I was able to do that. One of my mentors, that was a mentor from, I think she met me when I was either like 15 or, in that realm. She was like, "You were the most selfish teenager I ever met in my life."
Wow.
And she said, you just were not going to be without your brothers. She said you had an opportunity to move and go and soar. And she said, "You were just so selfless, and that's just who you are." And it's one of the things that I like about me. So
Yeah, the name of your podcast, Replace Loss with Love, it sounds like you just said, just by throwing yourself into bigger things or other people or bigger issues and advocacy literally gave you a focus point, gave you another reason to live. Because someone else needed you, the world needed you, your community needed you. And I'm so glad that you got that. I know before we end this episode 1, I want to just take it back to Mother's Day 2021, back to that balloon, where you finally got to that place where you were again able to recognize the trauma, but let it go. Walk us through that day.
I was nervous because I felt like I had imposter syndrome. I did. I felt like, you're going to do this, but do you really belong here still? You know? And I think that's what made it the beginning of the journey of even writing the children's book, was because I was like, how many other people feel like this? But I did take the opportunity that day to solely focus on me, right? Because I have to do that. I have to do the work. Okay, this is your time. You need to focus on you. Everybody else can wait. Even though you want to give them parts of you, you still have the responsibility to prioritize you. So I was very grateful that the people that showed up that day were selfless as well.
Mm.
And they made sure that I focused on me, right? Um, and so that was like a really great moment because then I didn't have to share the stage per se, right? Even though those two women were mothers in their own right. And they were like, we're going to hold you up. So it's that community that I plan on building with Replace Loss of Love. That day they did that for me. They were like, we're going to stand with you. We're going to let you digest this. And one of my good friends that has been in my life since I was a girl, she lives in New Jersey. She made sure you get there. I want you to be there. I need you to, do this. I can't be there with you in person, but I am there with you in spirit. And so I felt seen. And so I had to walk through that time of saying, okay, you belong here. You do not back away. You call this. This is what you're going to do. And you're going to start this journey and then be present for this person and it's part of you. You've been present for so many other parts of you. And maybe once I start this avenue, that imagination that I had when I was a young girl would come back because I felt like I was selling myself short with all the things that I would want to produce and put into the world that's created, right? But I still owed her that, right? And so, like, I am turning a big age this year. I am turning 50. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Ooh, girl, you look so good.
You. And I'm so grateful to be alive, right? And to be here at 50, like that young woman at that age would have never thought that she would be here, right? And so, but the beauty about being this age and being where I am and releasing that balloon allowed me to say at this age where I'm going to be 50 in a few months that I can go back to her and say, come on, what is it that you wanted to do? And let's do it. I can go back to the little girl and say, come on, what do you want to do? And let's do it. Because you know how most times people say, man, if I would have known this and when I was younger, I would have done it differently. Well,
Yeah.
honestly, you can. Because you can go back to that little person that's in you, right? And
Wow.
say to that little person, I know more now. So what you wanted to do, let's do it, And then you can go to that middle-aged person or the young woman that I was at the time that was like tossing between, do you want to be a mother? You don't want to be a mother. Just saying it because of the fact that, everything you went through, like, who are you? Let's identify you. And because I'm wiser, I still get to play some things out for her as well without being in the space of imposter syndrome or the fear. So that balloon was not just a release of the symbol of love for my son and the gratitude that I have for being strong for myself, but it also was the release of it's too late.
That notion is too late. I want to stop you here, Trevilia, because the themes of gratitude that I'm hearing and self-acceptance is another chapter in your journey that we're going to get to in episode 2. So thank you to everyone who tuned into episode 1 of Replace Loss with Love. We'll be back with episode 2. Stay tuned.
Thank you, guys.